Hi, guys. This is Sarah, and this is our very first episode of We Are Bariatric Patients. And I have an awesome guest today. She has been in my life for a long time. And so, Julie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
All right. Well, I'm Julie Patterson. I am actually the big sister. Of Sarah. So she's known me her whole life, and I've known her for most of my life.
Well, thanks, Julie. So, how about you tell us a little bit about when you were a kid, and have you struggled with weight your whole life, or just take us through your journey a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so it probably started around first grade where I started gaining weight, and I remember being in elementary school being quite a bit heavier than the other kids in my class, and then once you joined school a little bit later, I remember you threatening to you know, punch a few kids or something when they make jokes or whatever. And
Yeah.
that pretty much continued all the way through junior high. And then in high school, I started taking a product that made me lose weight, lost quite a bit of weight. It's now outlawed because some of the ingredients were causing people to have very serious health problems, including death. So I
Wow.
was unable to get the product anymore. And pretty much as soon as I stopped it, within a few months, probably 4 to 6 months, gained about 60 pounds. And then it just slowly kept creeping up, up over the years.
Wow. Yeah, and I'm sure it wasn't for lack of trying, right? You probably had made lots of different efforts to lose weight over the years. I mean, you said it started in first grade.
Yeah, I had done quite a few different things. I do have some limitations, which I recently found out why, through different diagnoses. But so exercise was always kind of difficult, but I did, try and
Mm-hmm.
tried various diets, diet plans. There are a few out there now that weren't there back then because I actually had my surgery in 2011.
Mm.
And so there's a few things that I've learned about since, or that have gotten more mainstream since that, I've wondered maybe that would have worked, but there's a good chance it wouldn't have, because pre-surgery, my insurance we can't say required
Yeah.
that I go through a 6 month bariatric surgery course. And I had to do group meetings with post op and pre op people present. I had to have my weight and diet monitored by the local weight clinic, um,
Wow.
special diet, all that for 6 months. And the goal was they wanted you to lose 10% of your body weight during that period of time to show not only initiative that you're going to take it seriously, but also to kind of monitor and see if you could lose weight on a medically guided um, diet.
Yeah.
And ironically, I was not losing weight, and I unfortunately did get accused of cheating and not tracking right and stuff like that. And I
Yeah.
remember telling the doctor, why do you think I'm doing this? Like, I
Yeah.
can't lose weight. And
Yeah.
so that, it was a little difficult, but I brushed most of that off just because I was like, this is why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
So before surgery, usually, I think back then, I don't know about now, back then it was 2 weeks before surgery, you were to go to an all liquid diet so that your liver would kind of shrink up out of the way for the laparoscopic surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And I did have the root NY. And so they actually put me on that all liquid diet 6 weeks prior to surgery. And at that point,
Mm.
by the point of surgery, I had lost, I believe it was 12 pounds. So
Wow.
they were even surprised by that. That I
Yeah.
didn't. I still in 6 weeks on all liquids didn't really lose weight. At the time, I weighed 335 pounds, so
Wow.
I should have been able to lose pretty easily that 30 pounds in the 6 weeks on all liquid.
Yeah. Well, that just proves case in point that they don't understand what keeps people overweight. They think they do, but obviously, putting you on that all liquid diet for 6 weeks and still it wasn't even 10%. So there was something going on that your body did not want to release that weight.
Right. And who knows what that is. I'm still not a skinny mini per se.
You look
But
pretty good,
when
I have to
when you
say.
figure when you figure, 330 pounds down to the high 150s and mid 160s is kind of where I
Yeah.
fluctuate. Um Sometimes up to the 180s. It just varies, but with
Yeah.
some of the health problems I've had, I have gone up and down a bit. But that being said, early on, probably about maybe 5 years after my surgery, my husband and I decided to do the Ideal Protein program, which is pretty popular. Most people know about that. And
Mhm.
it's a guided diet with lots of fruits and vegetables and, all the supplements and whatever, and prepackaged shakes and meals and whatever. And I did it with my husband, not only because I thought maybe I could lose a few more pounds,
Yeah.
but and that was, I was probably at that point around in the 180s to 190s consistently.
Mhm.
Um, and both of us, ironically, really didn't lose much weight on it. I
Hmm.
was losing absolutely nothing, and they were just dumbfounded.
Yeah.
And my husband lost about 10 pounds. It was all, and we did it for quite a while, probably 8 months or so.
Yeah.
And so it was quite expensive and it wasn't working. And so we discontinued that. But uh, through a few different, um, not planned weight loss methods that I was doing just for health reasons,
Yeah.
later, much later, I dropped the extra weight and now, like I said, run usually in the high 150s to mid 160s.
Wow, that's an incredible weight loss story. And now for your height, you're within the perfectly healthy range, I would imagine, right?
It's a that guideline to me is always kind of funny, but
Yeah.
I'm actually still considered obese on that guide
Really?
chart. But
Hmm.
if you look at the percent, like the fat percentage that
Yeah, that's what we're
then
supposed to calculate.
but yeah, so
Okay.
I'm under the percentage of
Yeah.
fat ratio, but if you look at the charting, it still
Okay.
shows that I'm on the low end of the obese side.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting because I think you and I are both around the same height. I'm between 5'7" and 5'8",
Yeah,
and the goal weight they gave me was 155,
yeah.
and so if you're oscillating between 150 and 160, sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, well, like I said, it does vary. I don't monitor a lot. I've had a lot of
Yeah.
doctor's appointments lately, so I've monitored a little bit more closely, not because I
Yeah,
wanted
do
to,
we every time?
but yeah, I've been like pre health crisis a couple of years ago. I was
Mhm.
consistently running in the 157, 159 range,
Mhm.
and then I went up during health crisis mode, and then now that I'm kind of recovering and figuring some stuff out, I'm back down into like the mid 160s, like 165, 166.
Nice, nice. So it sounds like other than crisis mode, your body is pretty happy in that range. And did you have like health concerns at your highest weight? Like, were you struggling with diabetes or just anything in particular? Or I know you were still kind of young in your mid 20s?
Yeah, late 20s. Not really, ironically. I had and still have anxiety issues.
Hmm.
I had intermittent high blood pressure, but more because of white coat at the time. And besides like lack of flexibility and other things that have come to light with the reasons why recently, um, no real health concerns. I was considered pretty
Yeah.
healthy. I was on any medications and pretty active as far as I ran. I worked full time for 5 8-hour days a week, and then I
Yeah.
did uh, multi-level marketing for a couple of different
Yeah.
companies. So I did shows after work and ran
Right.
errands for the shows and things like that. And so I was on the go quite a bit back then. And having the surgery, I didn't slow down, until some of these other health concerns recently kind of came to light. So
Yeah, and they have nothing to do with the
No.
surgery all these years later, just yeah, timing. Um, so for people that may be around the same weight range that you were,
Uh-huh.
um, how do you remember about how long it took before you started noticing results? And do you have any regrets at all?
So I noticed results pretty quickly at that size. You do. I did make a little book where, like, once a month we would take a picture of me wearing like the same clothes in
Oh,
front of the
cool.
same door.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I don't even know where it is right now, but it's
Yeah,
somewhere. It's in a box. But
cool. I'd love to see it.
um and so it kind of shows the progress. But it
Mhm.
was I honestly can't tell you, like, I didn't really have a goal weight, honestly.
Yeah,
I was never like really fixated on weight, but I knew it was an unhealthy weight.
yeah.
And I was the only one in our family that was that large. And
Mhm,
so that was kind of a little bit of, reason factor too.
mhm.
But I wasn't a numbers person. I didn't care about the number on the scale so much. I didn't care about the number in my clothes. But in my head, I thought, if I can get to like a size 16, 18, then I'll be happy. And I
Right.
was wearing a size 26, 28 at the time.
Mhm.
For years, I had been like a 22, 24, and then I had gone up, a couple of years before I had surgery. And so I just kept seeing the writing on the wall that I was probably going to
Yeah,
keep going up.
s wrong
But
direction.
yeah, so that first several years, probably a good 8 years maybe, I was at that like 16, size 16 range, and I was
Mhm.
perfectly fine with that. And like
Yeah.
I said, my husband and I did that other diet because I thought it would be nice to get a little smaller, but it wasn't like a big concern of mine because I still
Mhm.
felt good in my skin. Now I wear a consistent size 12.
Cool.
Sometimes, depending on the manufacturer or whatever, I'll do a 14.
Yeah.
But like that 10, it's kind of a it's just not gonna happen. And so I don't really care about that though. But
Yeah, yeah, it's just a number, right? What really matters is how you feel in your
yeah.
skin and in your clothes, and you obviously proved earlier by your story of working plus having part-time gigs on outside of full-time work, how you still had a ton of energy and you've been healthy all these years. For people trying to decide what type of surgery that they're going to have, did you ever wish that you had a different type of surgery than the Roux-en-Y, or are you really happy with what you chose?
Well, at the time, really the only options were the Roux-en-Y or the lap band. I don't believe the gastric sleeve was an option back then. I had major reservations about the lap band just because of my husband used to work in settings that were kind of remote, and I had heard stories about the band slipping or herniating or causing problems.
Yeah.
And I wanted something more permanent that, which, some people would choose something not permanent. I wanted something permanent. And I did know some of the risk factors in doing it that way. And unfortunately, what I would caution other people is, number one, you got to do what's right for you and
Mhm.
know what your limitations are. You're not really going to know how surgery is going to affect you until you have surgery. But depending on how you go into it and knowing your body yourself, for me, I thought that was the right option. However, I did get a little too comfortable with my energy levels and things like that, and I wasn't as careful with the nutritional supplements.
Oh,
So over the years, and that has caused some problems here and there, and most recently some that I've had to correct.
yeah.
Pretty, I mean, it was a deal. So it was in combination with some other issues that I've had pop up that are not related at all.
Mhm.
But I would just caution people just to make sure you're taking your bariatric vitamins to make sure that you're staying within those requirements, and getting your protein and all of that as well.
Yeah, so for the rest of your life, keep on
Yes.
those.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned getting enough protein in. With the Roux-en-Y, have you found it difficult to meet your protein requirements? And has your hair ever fallen out and things like that?
I'm not. I've not really had problems with like losing hair and stuff like that, other than normal. What
Mhm,
normal
yeah,
people do,
normal people,
and
yeah.
what might be hereditary as well. But I wouldn't put it on the surgery itself.
Yeah.
You mentioned protein. You know, I mean, early on, I was really careful about measuring and making sure, and then, like I said, I got kind of lax, and
Mhm.
I always tried to make protein like a part of every meal,
Mhm.
but I wasn't like counting and paying attention as much, and I wasn't always doing protein supplements. Um, Again, because the health issues I've had the last couple of years, and my kind of bounced back the last several months
Yeah.
to year. I've been pretty consistent about some supplements, adding those back in, and then still keeping with. I'm still not measuring and counting the grams,
Yeah.
but I'm making sure that in my meals I'm having
Protein
protein, getting
first.
that first,
Yeah.
and then doing the supplements as well.
Nice. I know one concern I had before I had my surgery was that I would always only be able to eat a few bites of something, and that like bummed me out, thinking like, what if I go to a buffet and I want to try a little bit of everything? And I remember that you told me that yeah, in the beginning it's that way, but later that you could go eat a can of pineapple if you wanted. So maybe just touch on that real quick for people that maybe are afraid of the lifestyle restriction long term.
Yeah, so right from the start, I told my friends and told my husband um, one of our pastimes was to go out to dinner with our friends and go to restaurants. And
Mhm.
so
Huge
I
deal.
told them right from the start that that wasn't going to change. You know, I knew I was going to be restricted and we were still going to go out. Obviously, the first couple months we didn't really because it was like pointless. but
Yeah.
we didn't wait too long because you know that was our social life was doing that,
Yeah.
and so we would go out, and my husband and I like different things, and so I would just order you know what I wanted and take leftovers home,
Yeah.
and he would order what he wanted, and we still do that to this day. Of course, now I can eat more than I could back
Mhm.
then, but I just had to be okay with having leftovers and knowing that I
Yeah.
couldn't eat the whole thing. And I had made up my mind ahead of time that I was fine with that. Now there
Yeah.
are the foods that are just better fresh and better at the restaurants and whatever. And so
Yeah.
there's sometimes where you're like, oh, I really want to keep eating this. But eventually you learn the consequences of that and it fixes that pretty fast. So
Gotcha.
that hasn't been a real big issue. And as a side point, over the years, well, actually, right around the time I had surgery, we became yearly cruisers. And
Oh,
so we like to
yes.
take trips on cruise ships. And
That's
so people
huge.
were
Yeah.
like, what are you going to do when you're on a cruise? And
Mhm.
honestly, for us, the cruising isn't about the food. And so I just eat what I can and what I want to. And
Yeah.
it's never been a problem. I have had some of
Yay.
the waiters sometimes by the time I get to the entree, you know, I generally don't eat all of any one of the courses,
Mhm.
you know, but by the entree, I'm usually getting pretty full. And so I don't have very much. But the waiters sometimes will come and say, you know, is there something wrong with it? Do you want something else? You didn't eat very much.
Right.
And I'll be like,
Right.
oh no, I just have a small appetite. And they're fine. And they take that. They're fine with it. I don't feel the need with them to go into a big story. Now, with my
Yeah.
friends or acquaintances, or even if somebody asks outside of that kind of a formal setting,
Mhm.
I am very open about the fact that I had gastric bypass. I don't try to hide that from anyone.
I love that. I love that. I guess last question, just because we're coming up on our 20-minute mark here,
Sure.
and I would love to have another interview with you later. But last question would be, everybody seems to have the same fear of like, oh, well, if I can eat more later, does that mean I'm going to gain it back? Um, Now you have been multiple years out from surgery. You have not ballooned back up and gained it all back. So what would you say? Why? Like, you've been able to eat more, but you haven't started gaining in a massive way.
You know, I don't know why. Um,
Okay. Yeah,
they're
that's good.
they're potentially. I mean, they give you warnings about things to avoid and things that can make some people regain their weight.
Yeah.
You know, I've been a serial, not recently, like the last 5 years or so, but prior to that, I was a serial Frappuccino drinker. And they say
Really?
not to
Okay,
do
that'll
that.
make some people
I
happy to
mean,
hear.
you're not supposed to do that. I don't recommend doing
Yeah.
that, but I did. And
Yeah.
and I wasn't gaining weight. There was a period of time where I was a little frustrated and starting to gain, a little bit, not crazy, but and my husband said, "Hey, if you think about it, because I even bought a book like how to
Yeah.
lose weight after bariatric surgery,"
Yeah.
and my husband said, "I've noticed you've been taking sips of water, at your meals, and if I have a
Oh,
pop, you're having sips of my pop and stuff like that."
interesting.
And so I was like, "Oh, you're right." And so I
Because it
started,
flushes it down, right? It
yeah,
doesn't
it
let
kind
it
of, if you drink like very tiny drinks with your meal, then the food kind of slides through. And
then
so,
you
I
can
mean,
eat
you can
more.
get it stuck, of course, and then end up with a different problem, but
Yeah.
it'll kind of slide through. And so I was probably eating more. I don't know that I was because it didn't feel like I was to me, but
Yeah, yeah,
once I cut that out and went back to not drinking with meals,
yeah.
then it came right back off. So that was
That's
my
so
trick.
cool. Oh my gosh, no, that's wonderful to hear that just such a simple little tweak, could make that much difference, and, you didn't even have to, like, kill your coffee addiction,
Yeah,
so
and I was
that's great.
actually pretty good about the no drinking rule for
Mhm.
most of my period since I've had surgery. I actually really enjoy that format of eating. So if you're
Hmm,
hesitant about that, don't be scared of it. You'll get used to it.
yeah.
Actually, all of the population should be doing that. So we just have to.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I think for myself, I was scared of it, but what I've tried to be conscientious of is just drink my like maybe when I'm cooking dinner, I drink my water and makes me feel happy that I got my water in.
Yeah.
But you just have to stop like 5 minutes before you start eating, so that's not a big deal. So then you're already hydrated and you just have your meal then.
Right. Yeah, and for mine, they had actually told me it half an hour before and an hour after, and
Oh,
I've since learned, that I can drink closer up to a meal as well,
hmm, hmm.
and be fine. And afterwards, sometimes I can eat as early as half an hour after, and sometimes I do have to wait a full hour or more. It honestly depends on the density of the food that I've eaten,
Okay.
and so everybody's different.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I have so many more questions. I would love to interview you again. So yeah, let's set that up.
Okay,
And you did great. Thank you
sounds
so
good.
much for coming on my channel.
You bet.
Okay, have a good evening.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.